thing that's probably got you talking most this morning is this story on the front page of The Times. Sunak's wife, a non-dom in Downing Street. That means a person living in number 11 Downing Street, the heart of the Treasury, is a non-dom, is not paying tax on income earned outside of the UK in the UK. People are deciding this morning what they think about that. Before we all rush to judgment, though, let's try and understand better what non-dom means. Mike Hodges is partner at accountancy firm Safri Champness. Good morning, Mike.
Morning, Stig.
Non-dom's one of those phrases that gets bandied around and has been bandied around in British politics probably for 20-odd years. Just explain it to us. Who can be a non-dom?
It's a bit obscure, you're right, and it goes back to 1799. It's people who basically are not UK nationals. So that's your starting point. When you were born, you take on the domicile of your father or mother if the father's not declared. So it's really the country typically that you are a national of, where your home is, where you would go back to.
And why should someone who has earned money, say in India, with an Indian company where the money is coming out of that country and presumably is being taxed in the country, say India, why should they pay tax in this country?
I think that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? And I don't think that there is a logic there necessarily. You're saying that you've got this particular tax regime that as long as the non-dom doesn't bring the income or the gain they've made into this country, then it's not taxed here. So there's a logic, as I said, it goes back more than 200 years. Whether that logic still applies, that's really a question for the politicians. And they have been narrowing the rules progressively as the years go by. So now if you've been here for 15 out of 20 years, you will automatically be deemed to be domiciled here. But until that point, you can still take advantage of your non-dom status not to pay tax on your foreign income as long as you don't bring it into the country.
Now, if you knew an Indian citizen, again, not the wife of the Chancellor, living in the UK with a British spouse, and that person was making millions of pounds in earnings in India, would you as an accountant say the thing to do is to become a non-dom? That's the sort of expected course of action.
Yeah, I think just to pick you up there, it wouldn't be a case of becoming a non-dom. You would be a non-dom.
Yeah.
So if you are, then you tick the box and say, right, that is just the way the laws of the land work. And that's why I say it's really for the politicians to say, well, is this fair in the 21st century where you've got something that goes back to William Pitt the Younger and George III? Should that still apply? And that's where I would advise my clients according to the law of the land, and I would try to steer well clear of the politics.
Would it mean, let's flip this, I suppose, as we try and understand this, that if I am a non-dom, and they change the rules so I have to pay tax in this country, am I being double taxed? Am I being taxed in India and taxed in Britain for the same thing?
Most likely not, because the way taxation works internationally is there are treaties. So there was a treaty between this country and India, and individual countries enter into treaties that typically say, because there's no one standard, typically say if you're taxed in one country, you're not also taxed in another country. And that would normally, lots of details, but normally go down to the country where you are resident would have taxing rights. But then you have huge exceptions. So the US has its own set of rules because it says, well, it's a privilege being a US citizen, therefore we retain taxing rights where other countries probably wouldn't.
So the other point you made, which I thought was interesting, which is the question of how much, whether you're bringing the money to this country, which is a sort of nebulous idea outside of the 18th century where you physically would have to bring a bag of money into the country. Now now money is obviously much more mobile. If I'm earning, I don't know, £10 million as a dividend from my Indian company, am I just storing that in an Indian bank, or am I bringing it into this country? What does bringing it into this country actually mean?
The huge media, a great question. Yes, what you'd be saying is to someone who wants to take advantage of the remittance basis, keep your money offshore and be able to prove to me and to prove to HMRC that you haven't brought the money into the country. So the easiest way would be to say, keep that money in an offshore bank account that you can show money going in, money staying there, and nothing coming out to this country. Otherwise, you get caught. If you said, for instance, you bought a car or a jet or whatever in India and brought it to this country, that could be a remittance. It's very wide reaching indeed.
Someone suggested that it is possible to voluntarily pay tax you don't owe. So it's theoretically possible for the wife of the Chancellor to say, I got this 11 million in dividend. I could be taxed 38% on that. It's 4 million quid. I'm just going to pay that into the Treasury. Has anyone in your whole career voluntarily paid a tax they didn't have to pay?
Rapidly thinking through that, no, I can't say I've ever come across that. People are very happy to pay the tax that they have to pay, and they don't typically object to that. They say, right, that's what I have to pay, and that's most of my job is advising people. Well, how do the rules work? What tax are you due to pay? I've never seen someone say, right, I'm voluntarily going to pay tax I don't owe, and I'm not sure if actually HMRC would be able to accept that if you just made a voluntary payment. Conceptually, I guess you could. You could make it as a donation if you wrote a check to Rishi Sunak and said, please accept this on my behalf for the good of the nation. That might work.
I'd be interested if his wife did that, wouldn't it, I suppose?
Yes, without getting into the specifics. One thing you could do, as I said, domicile starts with, at birth. But you are able to say, if I've come to this country and I am staying in this country, then you can have what's called a domicile of choice. So any individual could then say, right, I've made up my mind. I've effectively taken this country as my home. I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life. I'm settled here, never going back to my country of birth. And then they would be domiciled in this country. So that would have the effect you're referring to, of then saying they would be taxed on their worldwide income in this country, because they would then be UK domiciled by having this domicile of choice.
Yeah, could you still retain your citizenship in another country if you did that?
I think you probably could, because domicile in the context we're talking is just tax, so it's just a UK tax concept. So I think you could still say, right, I am a citizen of whichever country, but for UK tax purposes, I have made this choice.
Mike, I've really enjoyed this. I don't often say I really enjoyed conversations about tax with accountants, but I really have, because I think it's quite important to try and wrestle with the detail of all this. So thank you so much for joining us this morning.
No problem at all.
That's Mike Hodges, their partner at accountancy firm Saffery Champness. Now you understand it. Now I think I understand it a bit better. Is it right or wrong? Does it matter? Is it politically difficult for Rishi Sunak, the tax status of his wife?